Today we're making eclairs, delicious ones with a crispy shell and tender cream inside. Let's start with the most important part, choux pastry. I pour into a heavy bottom saucepan 150 grams of water, 150 grams of whole milk. There are tons of choux pastry recipes out there. Some people use only water. The eclairs rise higher, get very hollow inside, but the flavor is a bit neutral. Others use only milk. The pastry becomes softer, creamier, with a beautiful golden crust. My favorite is 50-50 water and milk, the perfect balance for me. Water gives a strong rise and nice big air packets. Milk adds tenderness, rich flavor, and that gorgeous golden color. Next, I add sugar and salt. Salt in choux pastry is actually a structural ingredient. It helps develop the gluten, make the dough stronger and more elastic, so the eclairs hold their shape. It also speeds up the Maillard reaction, giving you that beautiful golden caramel color instead of pale. Without salt, the pastry tastes flat, so salt is not just seasoning. It's key to perfect texture and appearance. I always cut the butter into small cubes. If you throw in a big chunk, it melts unevenly. The outside boils while the inside is still cold. That causes the liquid to boil too fast and unevenly, and you lose too much moisture before adding flour. Cubes melt quickly and evenly. The whole mixture comes to a boil at the same time, moisture stays balanced, and the dough incorporates perfectly. Now the flour. I use all-purpose flour. Mine is King Arthur all-purpose 11.7% protein. I always sieve the flour right before adding. It removes lumps and adds air, helping the pastry rise better. Many professional pastry chefs blend high-protein bread flour and low-protein pastry flour to fine-tune the texture. Bread flour, 12 to 14% protein, gives strong structure and big rise. Eclairs stay tall and don't collapse. Pastry flour, 7.5 to 9% protein, makes a delicate, thin, smooth shell with almost no internal webbing, very elegant and refined look. A 50-50 or 60-40 mix combines the best of both, height and stability from the strong flour, plus tenderness and thin crust from the weak. The resulting protein usually lands around 10.5 to 11.7%, exactly the sweet spot for choux pastry. But that's my oven and my situation. Your oven might be gas, electric without fan, or completely different. So experiment. Use what you have. If eclairs collapse, try stronger flour, 12 to 13%. If the shell is too thick and tough, add some weaker flour. Change ratios. Bake a small test batch. Take notes. You'll find your perfect match. Baking is always a journey. Now I move to eggs, another very important ingredient in choux pastry. How we add them and how many determines everything, whether the eclairs rise, stay hollow, get crispy, or end up flat, soggy, or cracked. I crack the eggs into a separate bowl and blend them with an immersion blender until completely smooth. Then strain through a fine sieve to remove any egg membranes and tiny air bubbles. Those can ruin the texture if they stay in. I put the saucepan back on medium heat and bring the mixture to a full boil. Make sure the butter is completely melted first. As soon as big bubbles appear, I'll over the surface take it off the heat right away. I add all the flour at once into the hot boiling liquid. Immediately stir vigorously with a wooden spoon or spatula until the dough comes together into one smooth ball and starts pulling away from the sides. Now I need to dry the dough. This is one of the most important steps many people skip or rush. I put the saucepan back on low heat and keep stirring energetically for 1 to 2 minutes. We are evaporating excess moisture so the dough becomes elastic, glassy, and ready to take in the eggs. How do you know it's ready? 3 reliable signs. A thin film appears on the bottom of the pan, a light coating of starch and fat, not a thick crust. This means excess moisture is gone. Starch has fully bound the water. The dough completely pulls away from the sides and bottom and rolls into a smooth ball easily. You hear a characteristic shushing or light crackling sound, the moisture evaporating and the dough lightly toasting. Keep the heat low to medium-low, dry slowly, no burning. Now take it off the heat, transfer to a large bowl and let it cool to 113 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Only then add eggs. Add eggs gradually 30 to 40 grams at a time. After each addition, mix 30 to 60 seconds until fully incorporated and the dough is smooth and glossy again. The number of eggs is never exact. It varies depending on how much you dry the dough. In the end, add the last bit little by little, literally 10 to 15 grams at a time, and test the consistency each time. This way you never ever do it and ruin the dough. Check consistency. The dough should fall slowly from the spatula in a heavy white ribbon. On the spatula you get a clear V-shaped beak, thick, not spreading. After all the eggs, the dough should be glossy, elastic, smell nice and hold shape in the back. Now transfer to a container, cover with plastic wrap and let it rest 20 to 30 minutes at room temperature. For piping eclairs, I use an OpenStar tip Ateco 866 or similar 9FT, opening diameter 12 to 13 mm. The tip creates ridges on the surface. During baking, these ridges help steam escape evenly along the whole length. The pastry rises beautifully without random cracks or balls on the ends. It's best to pipe on a perforated silicone mat. A perforated silicone mat is a silicone baking mat with lots of tiny hollows all over. It lets hot air circulate underneath, so the bottom bakes evenly and gets super crispy instead of soggy or underdone. After raising, I transfer the dough to a piping bag with the tip and carefully push out all excess air. Any air bubbles left will expand evenly during baking. Eclairs get wavy, cracked or crooked. I take a regular plastic spatula about 12 cm long, that's the classic eclair size. Dip the edge in flour and lightly mark the length straight on the mat. I pipe at a 35-degree angle, the tip almost touching the mat. Very important. Apply even, steady pressure and don't pull the bag at the end. Otherwise, the eclairs will curve or get uneven. I smooth the little peaks on the end with a wet finger, so they don't burn and look neat. I lightly dust the eclairs with powdered sugar. It helps them rise evenly without cracks. Now into the freezer for 15 minutes. Freezing raw eclairs is my favorite trick for perfect rise. The surface dries a little and firms up. The shell forms evenly, steam works gently, rice is smooth, almost no cracks or end balls. In convection, this is especially helpful. Airflow doesn't blow, the dough sideways, shape stays perfect. Now into the oven. I preheated my small convection oven to max, 464 to 482 degrees Fahrenheit. As soon as it reaches temperature, I turn it off completely and immediately put in the tray with frozen eclairs. Wait 10 minutes, the temperature drops to 302 to 320 degrees Fahrenheit. The moment my thermometer shows that range, I turn the oven back on the 302 to 320 degrees Fahrenheit and bake another 30 minutes until deep golden brown. Why this method? Because in my oven the convection fan never turns off, it's always running. If I bake straight at high temperature, the surface would dry and harden too fast, and steam would burst through in cracks. So I give a strong initial heat burst, then let steam work gently and stabilize at 302 to 320 degrees Fahrenheit for even drying. If you have a regular gas or electric oven without convection, do it a bit differently. Preheat to 356 to 374 degrees Fahrenheit. Put in the eclairs, keep the oven on, and after 10 minutes, without opening the door, lower to 320 degrees Fahrenheit and bake until golden, usually 25 to 35 minutes depending on your oven. The key, don't open the door for the first 15 to 20 minutes so steam stays inside and the eclairs don't collapse. Baking time can vary depending on your oven, size of eclairs and how many are on the tray. Now let's make the vanilla pastry cream. I pour cream and milk into a saucepan, half and half for a rich, delicious cream. I take a vanilla bean, split it lengthwise and scrape out the seeds with the back of the knife. Seeds and pod go straight into the cream milk mixture. Bring to a boil, then immediately remove from heat. Cover with plastic, rub directly on the surface. so the mixture infuses and absorbs all the vanilla aroma. Let it sit at least 10 to 15 minutes. Longer is even better. The flavor gets stronger. Next, sugar, yolks and starch. Always weigh everything. Eyeballing won't give consistent texture. To the yolks I add cornstarch and half the sugar. Mix thoroughly with a whisk until completely smooth, no starch lump. Lumps will turn into chewy little balls in the cream. We don't want that. Now that the vanilla has infused, I put the saucepan back on the stove, gently reheat it and add the second half of the sugar. I take out the vanilla pot. I'm not throwing it away. I rinse it, dry it and put it in my sugar jar. It will give the sugar a beautiful vanilla aroma over time. I remove the saucepan from the heat and start tempering the yolks. I pour the hot milk cream mixture in a thin stream while whisking vigorously and constantly. I mix everything well and pour it back into the saucepan. I set it on medium heat and whisk carefully, especially around the corners and bottom, so nothing sticks or forms lumps. As soon as the mixture starts thickening and I see the first bubble, I cook it for about 1 more minute with constant whisking. This makes sure the starch is fully cooked and the cream becomes stable. I take it off the heat and give it one final good whisk until smooth. Quickly transfer it to a shallow container. The thinner the layer, the faster it cools. Cover with plastic, rub directly on the surface in contact so no skin forms, and straight into the fridge to cool to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now we're making the coffee paste. It gives the cream an amazing depth and coffee flavor. I weigh instant coffee and transfer it to a heavy bottom saucepan. Add sugar, pour in water and set on medium heat. As soon as it starts boiling, I switch to low temperature 118 degrees Fahrenheit on my induction. If you don't have induction with precise control or use gas, regular electric, just turn the heat to the lowest setting. The mixture shouldn't actively boil, just gently simmer and evaporate the liquid slowly. You'll see the mixture gradually thicken, turn dark and glossy. That means the coffee and sugar have concentrated perfectly. After 10 minutes, turn off the heat. Stir well, check the temperature, it should be around 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Now pour in coffee liqueur, I use Baileys. If you don't have liqueur, you can skip this step. The paste will still be delicious. Transfer to a glass jar, seal tightly and put in the fridge. Let it cool at room temperature first, then refrigerate. It keeps perfectly for 2 to 3 weeks. Now we are making the coconut pasty cream. Super tender with a bright coconut flavor. I separate the egg yolks from the whites. Add a tiny pinch of salt, it really enhances the taste and helps stabilize everything. I wet the cornstarch and add the full amount of sugar right away to the yolks. Mix thoroughly with a whisk until completely smooth and lump-free, no starch clumps. Here I'm using Cara coconut cream. Look at the ingredients: 99.9% coconut cream and just a touch of xanthan and guar gum for stability. I used other brands before. They cost twice as much but had lots of coconut water, and the coconut taste was weak and diluted. I heat the coconut cream until hot. Do not let it boil. Coconut cream curdles very easily at a full boil. I pour the hot cream into the yolks in a thin stream while whisking vigorously and constantly. Mix everything well and pour it back into the saucepan. Set on medium heat and whisk actively, scraping the bottom or corners so nothing sticks or lumps up. As soon as the mixture starts thickening and the first bubble appears, cook another 30 to 60 seconds with constant whisking. That fully cooks the starch and makes the cream stable. At this stage, I take the cream off the heat and once it has cooled slightly, add the butter. I mix it thoroughly until smooth, then transfer it into a container. Cover with plastic wrap directly on the surface, in contact, no skin forms. Straight into the fridge to cool to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the final coffee cream. The process is almost the same as classic pastry cream, just with a coffee kick. I mix cream and milk half and half, pour into the saucepan. To the yolks, add sugar and cornstarch. Whisk thoroughly until completely smooth, no starch lumps. Bring the cream milk to a boil. Pour the hot mixture into the yolks in a thin stream, whisking constantly and vigorously. Mix well and pour back into the saucepan. Set on medium heat and whisking actively, scraping bottom and corners so nothing sticks. As soon as it starts thickening and the first bubble appear, cook another 30 seconds with constant whisking. This fully cooks the starch and stabilizes the cream. At this stage, add the coffee syrup. I use 2 teaspoons, but adjust to your taste. Want strong coffee flavor? Add more. Want a lighter hint? Less. Mix thoroughly with a spatula, especially around the edges and bottom. Transfer to a bowl. The cream is super glossy, rich and smooth. See how it shines and slides on the spatula. That's normal and good. It means the fat from cream and yolks emulsified perfectly. The cream is rich and silky. Sometimes you see slight curdling on the surface. That's also normal, just fat separating a bit from temperature change. Now let's make a coffee glaze for the eclairs. I start with the gelatin, add cold water, mix well to avoid lumps and let it bloom. Next I wet out the white chocolate. In a saucepan I combine heavy cream and glucose syrup, heat over medium heat, stirring until the mixture starts to come to a boil. As soon as you see the first signs of boiling, remove from heat and pour it over the chocolate and bloomed gelatin. Let it sit for a couple of minutes so the chocolate melts gently. Then blend with an immersion blender until smooth and fully emulsified. The glaze should be shiny and completely smooth. Add the coffee paste we prepared earlier and blend again to fully incorporate. Try not to incorporate air, so the glaze stays smooth and free of bubbles. Transfer to a container, cover with plastic wrap in contact and let it stabilize. Let's make the chocolate glaze for the eclairs. For a balanced flavor, I'm using a combination of dark and milk chocolate. I soak the gelatin in cold water, mix well to avoid lumps and let it bloom. Meanwhile, in a saucepan I combine water, sugar, glucose syrup and heavy cream. Heat over medium heat, stirring until the mixture starts to come to a boil. Remove from heat and pour the hot mixture over the chocolate and bloomed gelatin. Let it sit for a couple of minutes so the chocolate melts gently into the hot mixture. Then blend with an immersion blender until smooth, shiny, and fully emulsified. Transfer the glaze to a container covered with plastic wrap in contact and let it stabilize before using. I transfer the stabilized vanilla custard cream into a bowl and whip it with a mixer. This softens the cream, makes it pliable, and gives it the perfect consistency for filling eclairs. All custard cream is always firm after refrigeration. The second method, which I demonstrate with the coffee cream, is to gently warm it over a double boiler and stir actively. The texture will be slightly different from whipped cream, but the cream will become convenient for filling eclairs and working with. I pipe all types of cream into a pastry bag fitted with a nozzle. The eclair should be empty inside without any internal membranes. I poke a hole from the bottom with a wooden skewer to make it easier to fill them with cream. Then I fill the eclair from the pastry bag. When a little cream starts to come out of the hole, it means the eclairs is completely filled. I carefully wipe off any excess cream from the bottom with a spatula. Next, I dip the filled eclairs into the chocolate glaze, wipe the sides, and carefully smooth the surface with my fingers. I made the coffee glaze slightly warmer to show how the liquid glaze spreads in a thin layer and quickly flows over the eclairs. For finishing touches, I lightly dust the coffee eclairs with cocoa powder and sprinkle the coconut eclairs with baked coconut flakes. They are crunchy, not chewy, adding texture and extra flavor. Look at this perfect cross section. The glaze is glossy, the The cream is soft and evenly distributed inside. This is exactly how a properly made eclair should look.